Welcome to another episode of Bet on T Craig with with the one and only magnificent, glorious, fantastic phenomenon, Chase Sloan.
I am here with the super incredible, passionate, driven, disciplined man of habit, the man of action, the man of consistency, Mr. Randy Mbuga. I am so excited, you guys. First of all, Randy, we got to shout out our producer.
Hey, I appreciate it.
We just want to
Why
appreciate you.
why now is your time?
Right now is your time. So much love and respect from the Chasing Real Estate Group. You guys definitely look them up. Google Randy. We got some stuff to talk about today.
Let's get active.
We always do.
Let's get
The
active.
first thing, of course, we're going to talk to you about, as promised, is the language of real estate. So we're in a new month. We've got new data. Let's talk business. So when we're talking about the Houston real estate market, remember, there were three key numbers that I said for you to pay attention to in order to make an informed and educated decision. That includes the month of inventory that we have available, the median sales price, which is what homes are selling for in the middle if you just line them up top to bottom, and then the average sales price. So that's, of course, if you take them all, add them together, and divide it. Now, the reason why we look at median and average is because Houston has a lot of luxury real estate, and that can sometimes skew those numbers up. So you want to give you guys two perspective, realistically on average what people are spending, and then also where people can start, right? Because I think sometimes, Randy, people will see a $500,000 home and think, I can't get a house,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And so focusing on that, let's talk about it. So when I said the months of inventory, remember that means how long would it take if no builders built and no other new homes came on the market for sale, including resale homes? How long would it take for us to run out of inventory, homes available? We have 3.3 months worth of inventory. Randy, when you hear 3 months of inventory, what do you think?
That is a pretty standard, I would say, market at this time. So it's not that homes are selling too fast. It's not that homes are sitting on the market for too long. So it's pretty standard.
Absolutely. We like to call it a balanced market, right?
Right.
So what we don't want are like extreme seller markets where we have less than 1 month of inventory.
Mhm.
That's where you guys start to see that strong competition coming in, and there's just people over, bidding for the home just because there's a scarcity. We also don't want to see the swing side of an extreme buyer's market to where, sellers are having to bring money to the table or have significant price reductions, and we'll see that when inventory hits more than 6 months. So anything between 3 months and 6 months, Randy, is a balanced market. That means there's opportunity for everybody.
Right.
And we're up 0.7% from last year. So
Okay.
there's more selection. So if last year you were thinking to yourself, it's not a lot of homes on the market, I'm not finding what I'm looking for, now is the time. Like our producer. Now is the time, right?
Now is your time. And I think that something that we always talk about is how it's like people wait to make certain decisions
Mhm.
based on whether circumstances are better. Like you're saying, oh, I'm waiting for the crash. It's like, what does life look like? Or imagine if the crash does not happen. Right now, because there's two ways to see this. If you went to the extremes of both sides to say that, okay, what if the crash does happen? Right. And now you're saying that all homes are penny on the dollar, but you're not the only investor in the market. So
Yeah.
now you're playing against people that have $200,000, $300,000 cash to go and invest. So now imagine you're saying, I'm going to finance. Someone says, I'm purchasing it cash. Which offer do you think is going to win? That's the extreme side of saying the market will crash. This is what it may look like. But now, if we're talking about how we have 3 months worth of inventory, but you're saying homes are too expensive right now, it's like, well, okay, what happens or what does it look like if you wait
Mhm.
and homes don't go down and they stay exactly where they're at? Interest rates maybe do come down. And then now what happens? You're still in competition with other people who have the money to play with. So now choose
Yeah.
choose the lesser of the
You
two evils.
you do, and I think that's why, again, I always say logic makes you think and emotion makes you act. People have been saying the market's gonna crash since 2000, since after the first crash, right? People been saying the same thing since 2011. It's gonna
Mhm.
crash, it's gonna crash, it's gonna crash, it's gonna crash. Homes were when our median home price was 150, 175, 200, it's gonna crash, it's gonna crash, it's gonna crash, it's gonna crash. Now we almost double.
Right.
Right. And so you have to ask yourself when you say, like, how long are you willing to wait and what is the cost of indecision. And this is not to pressure you, right? Like I always say,
Make an informed decision.
this is about you making an informed decision about what you really want in life. And something that our coaches often tell us is that competition drives your timeline, not convenience. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm going to do it next year. I'm going to do it when my lease ends. I'm going to do it when I have a better job, right? And okay, but in the meantime, what are you missing out on?
For sure. And I think I always like to say, going off the story of how I watched my mom purchase a home in 2008 and just seeing what happened over the next 10 years to where she probably sold the home almost double,
Hmm.
and it's like, it's not to say that everyone is expected to see those same type of returns, but what does it actually look like on paper where you're saying that I have this asset that if I needed to sell, I could sell? So now you're talking about net worth.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times, like, we try to make it like it's not gambling. Real
Right.
estate is not gambling. It's not like going to Kashada and putting, I don't know, 1,000 on black or what, betting on black or whatever, or playing blackjack or something like that. It's time in the market, right? So time will make you look smart in real estate.
Hmm.
People that we look at, whoever you admire, whoever you follow, it's not that they're different than you or better than you. They just made a decision and now they've been sitting on it. So, like your mom, when she made the home, she bought the home. Yeah, she has this asset, and I'm pretty sure she has a lot of equity now. Someone may be looking at her like, man, how did you do it? How did you have that courage? And she just made a decision.
Yeah, no, my mom sold that home during the pandemic. So while she, of course, saw X amount of returns, the only thing is that we all now think back and say, "Dang, should have kept it."
Well,
But that's with more information now than we had, 3 years ago,
I think that
4 years ago,
you
really.
take it with a grain of salt,
Of
though,
course,
right?
yeah.
Because
She still
you
made
know
profit.
every situation is different, and that
Hmm.
includes sellers. Maybe you do need to hold on to the home. Maybe this is a long-term buy and hold investment and you plan on having it fund your retirement, whether through cash flow or whether you liquidate it in your 60s. Sometimes, most times, real estate is a vehicle. And part of real estate being a vehicle is selling it, right? You know, this is just my opinion. Don't tag me, don't add me. I always tell y'all this. Real estate is not meant to be a shackle. And it's my belief that sometimes when we're not exposed to the conversation, we're scared to do it again.
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. I told you before, grandma's house, right? Some people need to sell grandma's house.
Right.
They just do, right?
Hmm.
Because maybe you don't have the capital to fix it up. Maybe your family has just outgrown it. I always share the story that, before my grandmother passed, she sold the home that my parents grew up in. My mom, not my parents, but my mom grew up in, my aunts, my uncle, they grew up in, and she bought a bigger one. And we had talked so many Thanksgivings about fixing it up, and do you have a renovation person, and what contractor, and can we add on? And it's like, it's your grandmother's quality, last year's. You're not trying to have her living through a construction zone.
Right.
She sold that house and then was able to buy a bigger home in Austin. And that almost leaks far as she used the profit from that house to put down a significant down payment on the new house.
Right.
And sometimes that's the benefit. So whether your mom sold the house or kept the house,
Right. No,
that
and then,
money funded something
and to
else.
your point, it did because she went and bought a bigger home, I would say. Uh, I mean, it was a little bit of a bigger home, but and did Airbnb with it.
Yeah.
So therefore, but it's also the location and all the other strategies putting into place. But she was able to then take, the smaller home in a less optimal location and purchase the home in a, better location closer to the children's hospital. And so it's, making an opportunity out of the strategy that you may not have even knew about beforehand.
One
You
of
just you just bought a home and made a great decision and then leveraged that first good decision to then make an even better decision.
Alan Johnson, one of our coaches, and he talks about how your first home probably will not meet all of your criteria.
Mhm.
You're lucky if your first home meets 50% of your
Mhm.
criteria. But the first home is to get you to the second home, which
Right.
might make 75% of your criteria. And then that second home will get you to the third home, might be 80% of your criteria. And then after you keep like rolling it, flipping it, rolling it and flipping it, not flipping like I bought a house in 30, sold it in 30 days, but just I lived in this house for 2 years, I've outgrown it. you slowly build up
Right.
to that dream home or that retirement home or forever home.
Hmm.
So I think your mom is a great example of what that looks like. She sold the house, she didn't blow the money,
Mm-mm.
she just rolled it into a new investment.
Just rolled into a new asset. And I mean, and it really just depends on the strategy because I feel like even something I've noticed even in my own family is just that, either because we did not know, we didn't make certain decisions. Because, there were clearly a lot of adults in my family during 2008, but we didn't know.
Hmm.
And so sometimes you're making a decision out of fear instead of out of logic. And
Yeah,
so it's interesting to just watch what I saw, I grew up seeing. And then also, now that we have more information and just to see us, it just maybe seems as if that, let me just keep on renting till I get my dream home. And it's like, it's helpful because now family members can come and stay at the dream home. But now we're also like, how you gonna get the next property if but then it also like how you gonna get the next property for over leveraged over this first one. But
yeah,
I think it also just depends on what is it that person wants.
absolutely. Because see, so for example, you touched on something else. You said like a lot of people are waiting for the market to crash. I always say to every action, there's a reaction. So you can't ask for the world to fall apart and then think that you're not going to be impacted.
Right.
A crash is a crash.
Hmm.
That means that all hell has broken loose, right? I think it's a little naive to think that, oh, I just can't wait for the market to crash, but your job won't be impacted. We're seeing that with layoffs, that your neighborhood won't be impacted, that the businesses around you won't be impacted. So I think I don't really like it when the public glorifies things like that. While I understand the sentiment, it's like, think about what you're saying. Life and death lies in the power of the tongue. You're praying for a crash that comes with consequences. So I wouldn't be hoping for the fail of America, regardless of whatever you believe.
Right. No, and I think also when you think about it for even jobs, because even now I know a few people who are in IT, and it's like it's different.
Yeah,
It's not what it used to be.
right.
It's
But
not what it used to be.
but here's the thing. There's no perfect, right?
Hmm.
So even if you make a bad decision, it's still a decision. And I choose to believe that you're not going to make a decision so opposite of what you desire in life that it's going to
Hmm.
be completely wrong, right? Maybe you can do it, maybe you could have done it differently. But the fact that you made a decision, it's kind of like what we talked about last episode, action over analysis,
Or yeah, paralysis by analysis,
you
or
know?
over analyzing situations instead of making certain decisions.
Yeah.
Any time that I've ever felt helpless was because I didn't make a decision.
Absolutely, because even if you were to lose your job, there are procedures in place to protect you, where you can talk to your mortgage
Yeah,
company or get
yeah,
on some kind of forbearance or
something.
repayment plan. But at least you got the
At
house.
least you
If
still
you
own the
if
home.
you waited and now lost your job, well, now you don't have a job and you still don't have a house, and now you have an apartment that by the fifth they want the
They
money.
want the money, and they're gonna charge you interest. Like, still gonna end up paying more money than what your rent was already budgeted for, allocated for.
Absolutely.
So I think it just comes down to what's the end goal, even.
What's the end goal? And like how long and like shortening the time, manipulating time to make the decision. Something we also talked about. So with the language in real estate. So I mentioned that we have about 3.3 months of inventory. That's up 0.7%. The median sales price is now 320,000 $320,500. That's up 2% from last year. So again, when we're talking about like, oh, I'll just wait for XYZ, and or I'll wait till my perfect home. Okay, is your income outpacing inflation?
And that's a real question. Because when people tell me, they're like, man, why don't you just get a job? I'm like, look, let me tell you something. I'm currently looking to then work on the skills that'll always look to outpace inflation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think that even for someone who's saying working a job, it's like, how can you take your active income, right, and
Mm-hmm.
turn it into passive income? It's a question.
Yeah.
It's just a question.
It's just a question. And
Yeah,
whatever you decide for you is the right answer for you.
100%.
Our job, as mentioned, our mission is to build strong communities through business and real estate ownership. And so the conversation is always going to circle back to, okay, how can I redirect? Because you have the money. One thing's for certain is that as a collective, we have the money. So it comes down to what are we doing? What choices are we making? What's the small sacrifice now that in 10 years will make us look incredibly wise, incredibly smart?
One of the quotes that I heard from Alex Hermosi was dragging your future into the present.
Yes.
I really like that quote because it to me it's very practical to say that who is your ideal self and what do you need to do to then drag to the future or to the present.
So, like, what does that mean though? Like dragging your future self into the present?
I think it's answering the question of what is it that you want, and so what do you need to do today or this year to then accomplish or get closer to that ideal self.
It's so interesting you say that. I have one of these, one of the workbooks that I work through, and we talk about goal setting to the now, like taking your 5 year self and then breaking it down into the tangible thing that you can do today.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, I think that that 5 year self, when we project it, it just seems so far away that you're like, I'll work on that in year 4. But it actually, it's the things that you do today that compound into the 5 year self. Like what I'm already starting to hear is that when you push the future down the road, you're more likely to not achieve it than if you say, okay, I want to retire in 5 years. So what am I investing in today?
Mhm.
Not what am I going to wait to invest in 2028 or 2029. No, what am I going to do in 2024?
And time is flying. Like we're already in the middle of February. Like we're already in the middle of February.
Yeah.
Like this is like I like to look at it that I'm not promised tomorrow. So you telling me we're already 45 great days into 2024. Like
Yeah.
we gotta be intentional. Like
You
if
got to
nothing
be.
else, like then whether you buy, sell, or invest into real estate, we must be intentional.
So I always like to, one of the things we said today, we were going to just talk about how we do that,
Hmm.
how we do it, how I did it, how he did it. And when we talk about time, being aware of it, one of the things, Randy, that we do is that we have standing appointments to where we revisit our goals, whether daily, weekly, or monthly. And
Hmm.
this is done through this is done with us as an accountability, and also done with people who know more and have done more than
Right.
us, right? So for example, every morning we have script practice. The crux of our business is having conversations. And if we don't want to practice on people out there, it's best to practice with a team and talk about some of the things that we just come across, the situations, and getting wise counsel on how should we approach that. That's something we do daily.
Hmm.
The second thing is we have strategy consultant and really helping us bring that 5 year self. And it's interesting because we have this call once a week, Randy, and every week I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't do this.
Held accountable at the
I ain't
highest
never trying to
level.
be on this thing, this little show, telling you guys that I'm better than I'm not. I fail weekly, daily, right? I just know it's a part of the process.
Yes. I mean, and I think I think it really helps, to be transparent and to be honest.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of the time we get caught up in what we want it to look at, what we want it to look like
Yeah.
instead of what it is. And I think when we're faced with that reality, that's like, I may not hit my goals if I don't step it up. Like
Right.
there's a very real like my life is in my own hands, and if I don't step it up, this is not gonna end well.
Well, because you have two choices: change the goal or change your actions.
You gotta change your actions.
So
Because if you change the
then you have to
goals,
ask yourself, why did I set the goal? What did this goal mean to me? I talked to you about that, Randy, right? Like the goal can't just be a number. It can't just be I want to make $1 million. Why? What are you going to do with it? What is the money for? What will you fund? What will you invest in? Who will you help? What communities will you give back to? What will assigning every
dollars.
dollar a name
Hmm.
and then distributing it out like a soldier, right?
Yes.
Like you were in the army. I'm sure the person didn't just say y'all go out there and make it work.
I'll say depending on the leader, but
I don't.
depending on the leader. No, I
Y'all
mean
trying
just
to
keep
slide that through.
just depending upon the leader. No, I mean I would say that
I can only think of
you're.
Captain America when it
Oh
comes to.
oh my gosh. I mean, what? No, but so I would say first of all, it depends on the leader, but also there is going to be a mission, an SOP. There has to be something that we're following. Guidelines, procedures. There's got to be a direction, mission. Like, what's the actual mission? What do you need accomplished the next week?
Mm-hmm.
Who was assigned what task, and Just got to keep
It's
pushing
very
forward.
clear.
It is very clear.
And a lot of times it's so that you can get the evidence, right? It's so
Yeah.
that you can go out and do the thing and then come back and report your results.
Yep.
Like, okay, this is what we were charged to do. This is where I came into difficulty. And now it's like, okay, so now, because you're not going to know the problems until you take action.
Mhm.
You know, I even think about like when we first started this podcast, you know, I never forget the first episode, I started checking on water. No, I started choking because we seen it in episode 1. I started choking because it was our first time that we had like been talking for an hour. And now every episode we have water, right? Because who know?
No,
Who
I don't know about
know?
that one. I don't know about that one. But you thugged it out though. Fist bump. You thugged it out. But
I had a friend of mine watch the show. She was like, everything was good till you started dying.
I just but to your point though, in saying that assigning every dollar, I think that there's a lot of like logical and practical statements in the things that are being said. Even the things that we're learning, I feel like when we talk about somebody wanting to sell, buy, or invest into real estate, it's the same thing. Like, why is this important to you?
Hmm.
What matters if you do or don't get into this home? Like,
Yeah.
what changes in your life? Like, what's your timeline? Like all these things, because you know how when I mentioned that I had a realtor in the office when I was like 19, and he told me he was like a lot of people are just sleepwalking through life.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think the same could be said when we talk about business, when we talk about investing, you talk about life, you talk about relationships. You know, a lot of people we're just it's I would say maybe it's just easier to just drift along than to say that I need to take control of my life. Ups, downs, opposites, hula hoops. I got to do what I have to do.
Yeah,
You
because
know,
no one's coming to save you.
no one's coming to save you.
Something that, well, to stay on that point for a second. So when you talk about assigning a dollar and just the overall theme of the conversation, how I did it. So when I bought my first home, I'll tell you this. Now I had a pretty good big goal. I was already in real estate, selling real estate, and I'm like listening to all the people that I admire in real estate, and they're like, you want to put 20% down, you want to buy it like this, that, and another, right? So I was like, why not? That was the model that I was given, right? It's not the model that you have to follow. It's just one that I was given that I wanted to
Hmm.
challenge myself with. So first of all, I didn't have credit. Okay. I had messed up my credit at college.
Mm,
So
yeah,
by the time I like
say
fixed it,
it is what it
nobody would
is.
give me credit. Like I just kind of moved to paying for cash. And one of the things that the lenders told me is that no credit is like bad credit. It's basically the same thing to a lender's perspective.
Right.
So the first thing that I had to do was I had to establish credit. And since I couldn't get credit, I got a secured card. So I went to my bank and I just opened up a card for $500. I gave them $500. So I was
Mhm.
basically like borrowing against myself,
Yes,
and I use that for like gas
which is
and
smart. Yeah.
just very small things because it's just $500. So if you need to keep the credit card below 30%, you can't spend more than like 150,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
But I was doing this so that way I could build up a credit score.
Right.
So that was the first thing that I had to do. And then the second thing that I had to do was save money, right? And one thing that I learned that my financial coach taught me is that a lot of us look at money the wrong way. We get paid and we start paying our bills and take stuff that we need to take care of. And then we think, well, everything that's left, I'll save that. There's never anything left. If you're working like,
Hmm.
oh, I'll get my income, I'll pay my bill, and I'll save whatever's left, you'll never have anything left.
Right.
So switching your thinking, and when you get paid, taking off your savings off the top, like when it comes in. So
Hmm.
for me, I was saving 20% of my income. I was saving 10% for the business, 10% for my personal. So about 20% of every closing I was putting into a bank account. And then I had a target of how much money I wanted to be able to put down in my home. So I went to the bank, I opened a separate bank account. I named it, I titled it My First Home because you can change the name in your little account. And like clockwork, when I got paid, 20% went in there. Clockwork. I wasn't even thinking about it. It got to a point where it was just a habit. And it didn't look like much at first, it'd be like $200 there, $250 there, but then you start seeing it compound. You start seeing the bank account grow, and you're less likely to touch it because you're like, you've already given it an assignment. This is going towards my first home.
Hmm.
And now you're building this habit of saving a percentage of everything. And I always say use a percentage because I could tell you guys save $1,000 a month, but only you know if that's going to break you.
Right.
So it's
Right.
better to just save a percentage of your income, whether it's 10% or something more, and just to start that habit. And then I moved back home. True story, because I can't save, I could not save what I wanted to save if I had a
Right.
rent that was breaking my, you know, bank account.
Hmm. No, and I get that. I think that even for me to start credit, I started with a secured a credit card too. It was like $200, but I was like, well, hey, I need credit, so I started with a secure credit card, and then I think after that, you just need to kind of get into the system, and
Hmm.
then you have to it's playing a game, right? Because the thing is that if they're willing to give you a secure credit card for 200, you did have to front $200.
Yeah.
But then after that, you build good relationships with the bank and just do your own research and ensure that how can you look to increase your credit limit.
Something our strategist, Alyssa Benjamin of Alyssa Benjamin Creatives, told us was we can't make excuses for the process when you're asking for help on how to get it done. And it just stood out to me because I think a lot of times we'll get people and they'll approach us and they'll be like, well, what do I need to do? And this, that, and other. And you'll say it just like that. You need to go get a secured card and open it with $500. And people make excuses.
I think, and it's just either you did the work or you didn't.
Yeah.
Because I think like anything that I've ever really wanted in life, I really had to like put in the work. Like
Hmm.
I didn't maybe there were a lot of sacrifices,
Hmm.
and hopefully it did not come at the expense of others. But if I really wanted something, I was going to go and do it.
Like, what's a time that stood out to you most when you had to make like a significant sacrifice? Not like, okay, I'm going to not eat chips this week.
No, I don't think. See, I don't know what it was,
Hmm.
but when I was in Georgia, so Alabama and Georgia were very significant to me because it was like I'm living in two southern states just because I want to make money. Like I was really only there in those states to make money. So what I was doing was every time I would get paid, I would send the money to two different bank accounts. So I have a bank account with Chase, I have a bank account with Navy Federal. And so I would look to just have the money go to those two banks, different amounts, whether it was like 60% here, 40% there, because depending on the job, you can split your income based off the check. You just tell them where to direct deposit check, they'll do it.
Hmm.
So they'll send the check, and then I would just look to put away. I would say most of one of the checks, whether it be 10%, 20%, but I would make sure that I'm putting money aside, and then I'm budgeting for, of course, whatever my rent is, whatever groceries is, and
Yeah.
I'll just ball on the budget. And so that was my mantra: ball on the budget, ball on the budget, ball on the budget. So
Yeah.
friends or coworkers would ask me, "Hey, Randy, do you want to go eat lunch?" I was like, "No, I'm meal prepped."
Yeah. I think those are,
So,
and those are the small sacrifices. I love that you said that because when I was thinking sacrifice, I honestly was thinking that you did something big. Like, I don't know. But sometimes those,
I mean, yeah, if you okay, from that perspective, maybe I could have been qualified for more of an expensive apartment, but I was like, no, that's too expensive. I don't want that. So I would just say I would share the common area, then I would sleep in one room and somebody else would sleep in the other room.
yeah. And I think, I mean, but those are the things that you do to get what you want. Like what I'm hearing, number one, is it starts with the plan. Whether you have an automatic deposit to where
Hmm.
it's like they're just automatically sending the money to different accounts to where you don't think about it, or if you just have an automatic habit that when I get paid, I'm putting it into this account. The less you have to think about the how, the more likely you are to succeed. So if you know that I want to save $500 a month, the more you can automate that, whether it set a recurring transfer in your bank account or setting an occurring deposit from your paychecks, automate it.
Maybe I didn't view it as like extreme to me.
Mhm.
I don't think I just was like, I just want to put more money aside.
Yeah.
And maybe I didn't have a plan for what I was gonna do with the money, but I knew I was like, I'd rather have the cash on me than not have it.
Yeah.
Then I was like, oh, maybe I should look into buying a house. And then that's when I started looking to purchase a property. But I mean, the route I kind of went was, I guess everything works for a reason. And
Mhm.
so in October, October about 18th or so, when I got put on orders, or 11th, give or take, I got put on military orders. When you
Mm.
get put on military orders, it's an order. Like you have to show up. Like there's no going
What
back on
happens
this.
if you don't show up?
Yeah, I don't know who you want to take that up with, but
Yeah.
I don't want to play
I
that
just
game.
asked because I was
Cause certain,
watching.
cause certain people can call you, like, or you don't even want to, cause it's like, okay, if say a first sergeant called you, and there's the hierarchy of how the ranks work, you don't want a 1 star or 2 star calling you. You don't want those problems. Cause if they gave you an order to do something and then you disobeyed that order for no justifiable reason, that's your whole military career.
Shout out to the men and women who serve our country.
Yeah, that's your whole military career. Don't do
That
that. Don't do that. You don't want that to happen. But
that right there
yeah.
sounded really scary. You don't want no
No,
1 star, 2 star.
you
I
just
was
don't want
watching
you just
Raising Canaan and Jukebox didn't want to go. See, that's why I don't know what happens on the show. But
but you
anyway,
see, but look, it's an order. It's like an executive order. Like this is if people go through the documents, you see how many times it was signed or yeah, your all your information is in there. Like they got everything on you. You know what I'm saying? So it's just why I play that game. But anyways,
sounds very
this
scary.
is this
The
is
point is though,
the point is, here's the thing, is that there's always a reason, why or certain things do happen for a reason.
yeah.
And so what I did was I just kept stacking up the money. And then, my mom was like, hey, I need a gift for X amount. And I was like, damn, I just happen to have it. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
right. Because you
saying?
don't know what God is calling you to do.
Yeah. So
Like
yeah,
sometimes I think those are the whispers. Like sometimes, Oprah says that sometimes, like God will whisper and then he will yell. And it's about us becoming more intuitive to what we're being called to do,
very
even
true.
if you don't understand the purpose of
Very
why you're
true.
being told to do something. And I think, at the beginning of the year, you see all these challenges floating around. Like, here's how you save 17 or $10,000, $20,000. And it's like, do all this deposit. I think that's really good. Whether you have a purpose or not, I think you will be more successful if you have a purpose, or at least know, like, the reason $10,000 is important to me is because I intend to buy a home, or I
Yeah.
intend to gift my mother this thing, or I
Yeah.
intend to
Like
pay down debt.
I didn't even know. Here's the thing is that while I was doing a lot of traveling, because I was taking a lot of flights during that season, but traveling was probably the only hobby that I had, and that's probably why when I talk with so much conviction now, as far as like I don't have the energy or the bandwidth to waste any more time, is because to me, looking back, I'm like those are thousands of dollars that
Yeah.
I just spent on traveling. Like I didn't have to. I didn't. It wasn't required for me to travel. I was just traveling because I wanted to.
But what do
Why?
you think about the mindset when people are like, "Oh, but you never get time back. You can make money back, but you never get time back.
And I
Explore the
I
world."
I agree. I just think that there's a season for when to do it. I was just fortunate enough to
It's
be
true.
having a W-2. It's just then, I was getting consistent money. So even now when I travel, it's significantly harder. But, I think that I'd rather now looking back, I'm like, well, what happens when you've acquired X amount of capital to keep on investing so that now your investments pay for your lifestyle?
I think that's really what it is because
Because I was still investing too. Just I could have clearly been investing more.
you could, yeah, yeah.
So I that's the reality of it.
Because one thing you just said is like, it's significantly harder for you to travel now. Amen. Yet it's just, again, you never know how your life will change. And so you
Yeah,
never
yeah,
know
yeah.
what you need to secure while you can secure it
Very true.
because you don't know what that next chapter looks like. And I
Mhm.
think that's really the conviction that I'm growing into is like your procrastination could be exasperating a situation later. Like it might not have to be as painful if you understand that this is important for you to do now because you don't know how the world is going to change.
Very true. And that's why I think and to your point, it's like I always think that it's deeper than just real estate, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing is that you can utilize real estate to then build your portfolio, whether you have any desire to be a millionaire or be rich. It's still an asset if used properly.
Someone Ben Kinney, he's somebody I look up to in real estate, and he's just saying that, most of you are selfish because you
Mm,
only think about you. He was like, you don't know what you'll need that money for. You don't know if somebody may one day call you and say they've got a life-threatening disease and need to be able to have uh hospital money or
mm.
doctor money or surgery money. Or he's like, you think so small, you only think about you. And he was like, he did this exercise and he was like, I want you to write down the names of the two people closest to you. And so you write down your name, and he said, now scratch one off. And he
Mm.
said, and that's what's happens when you don't have enough life to not enough life, when you don't have enough money to where you never know. And this may be like a little bit,
No,
philosophical.
money is a tool.
It's a
Money is a
tool.
tool. I'm not about to. I'm not gonna
It's
sit here and lie to myself.
it's
Money is
not
a tool.
there's no humility in being poor.
None.
It just is. Even if the money is not for you, even if you don't
Just
desire
having
worldly
it.
possessions or
Yeah.
anything like that, money is good for the good it can do. So you can't save the homeless if you can't feed them, right? You still got to have money to go to the store. You can't help the little league school and help the football camp if you don't have money, right? So money can be a tool. Whatever your purpose is for the money, that's on you. But it just really, when I sat in that, he was like, now imagine having to tell somebody no because you didn't have the discipline to build the bank account or the investments or whatever.
Yeah,
You
it's
just don't
it's it's
know.
tough. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's tough
Yeah.
because there's been moments where I've had that happen, or I've spent money on, you know, excuse me, like relationships that I probably didn't have to spend that much money on. I just didn't. I didn't have to. I just did. So I think about that, now, and that's probably why when I'm so like I have such a high level of conviction,
Yeah.
like I'm not saying that it needs to happen overnight, but I am saying that I don't have time to waste because to me the last 5 years have been very like lesson after lesson after lesson. And so when I look at people that I've known over the last couple of years, I'm seeing like, oh, that's what focused effort, or that's what the
Mhm.
compound effect looks like.
Yeah, because you've seen the evidence. Something else that came up though was don't kill your momentum trying to find out what went wrong. And I think that's something that I definitely can speak to in just regards to like when you're putting in the effort, you're putting in the action, you're doing the work, and you don't always see the outcome that you desire at the speed you desire. And it's so easy to find kind of like blame yourself or take it personal or take it like, I know that we talk about failure is okay, but it doesn't feel like that in the middle.
Right.
Like in the middle you feel like a failure
Hmm.
and that's never fun. But just really learning that, like, don't block the momentum because you don't know how that thing will compound just because it didn't show up the way that you wanted it to,
Hmm.
you know. So that's something else that stood up. And I think the final thing that she talked about was don't let your ego kill the opportunity.
Yes. Yes.
What did you get from the conversation when she said that?
Don't be afraid to shoot your shot. Like, don't be afraid to ask for whatever it is that you need just because your pride is in the way.
Yeah.
And I think that, even me, I really do struggle with pride. I'm not gonna lie to you. And ego, oh yeah. I don't like being talked to crazy. I don't. I find it very disrespectful. And
Yeah.
I don't care. Rejection is what it is. That's business. But like being disrespected, that's a different thing. However, in terms of humility and being humble, it's like, yo, if you need to ask, like ask.
That is
So
crazy.
I literally, regard in the last couple of months, like if I really need something, I'm gonna ask. But there's the thing. It's why am I waiting until I really need something to ask?
I think
You
so.
see what I'm saying?
Me listening to you and I'm like, man, that is crazy because I just feel like, again, for my own self, I'm looking to myself and I'm like, wow, because I'm like you, I don't like to be played with
Hmm.
and I don't like to be disrespected and I don't like to feel foolish. So
Yeah.
anything that make me feel like that, I'm like, that's enough of that. You fool me once. And I can see where in some ways that's protected me, in some ways that's really been my ego keeping me from being able to achieve um, what I desire
Hmm.
or get the help that I need or build a relationship that I would grow from.
Right.
Because yeah, okay, maybe something that did happen was offensive, but Did you work to resolve it, or did you just stand on your square and like that's just the
because
end of that
it's
chapter?
and I think that's why, like, I think it's almost like it's either that you look to crush your ego or life will do it for you.
Yeah, because then like when you're forced to ask and you're forced to stop trying to figure it out on yourself, it's sometimes um it's crazy. I remember one time when I was little, there was like this field trip or something I wanted to go on. And I was like, you're like little, I'm trying to like time it right, the right time with my parents on like a good mood or something like that. And it was like the night before. And somehow I think I finally ended up telling them like permission. And my dad was like, when were you going to tell us this? And I was like, I was waiting for the right time. And he was like, what is the right time? Right. And it's like, number one, they're going to find out anyway.
Right.
Number two, it made it that much more complicated because now we're like trying to rush and get all this stuff together for a field trip that happened at 5 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like looking back, that's crazy. But I think sometimes we take that energy, like we're waiting for the perfect moment to ask for help or to just communicate where we are in life, and then life humbles us, and it's like, well, why didn't you ask for help when it was a small thing?
Yeah, now it's a big thing.
I think it's even like, and we talk about real estate because that's what we do. However, I'll say this, your business grows to the extent that you do,
Hmm.
right? So the only reason why we're able to really sit here is because of the amount of energy we focus on our personal development.
Hmm.
And then we bring those lessons into the business. So a lot of the things that like, yeah, we do the language of real estate once a month with you guys. However, after that, we're just talking about in context the things that we are learning along the way personally as we're growing as people. And so I think that when you're talking about pain versus pleasure, what are you going to allow to humble you first? It's either going to be that ego that you kill or life that's going
That
to do
smash
like
you,
an ant,
smash you,
smash you.
smush you. You just, I had to really learn that it's like I'm in control of the things that I'm in control of,
Hmm.
and the rest, I pray on it or something. But it's just like, why did I wait to then shoot my shot?
Yeah.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
What's the worst that can happen?
What's the worst that could happen? Because even while making calls today, I was thinking, I was like, this person may hang up on me. This person may cuss me out. This person may not answer. And I end up leaving a voicemail. But here's the thing. Does my life get any better? Or rephrase that. Does my life get any worse if I don't make this call?
If you don't, it will. If you
But if
don't
I
make the
do,
call, it will get worse.
you see what I'm saying? But would I be in any worse of a situation if I did not make the call? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because now it's like I'm debating on, do I make the call or not? And it's like, well, make the call.
Yeah. I mean, because you are
Make the
controlling what you
call.
control.
Make the call.
So
Might as
something
well.
something I want to talk about is like something that came up was the ability to think creatively. And are we getting better at thinking our way out of solutions? And we're kind of talking about
Ooh.
computer dependency, Google dependency. One of the things my mom once said was that, when she was working in corporate America, they had like one computer, like a big computer down in the basement. You worked on something, you put in a machine, and some big old complicated thing. But she said because of that, it wasn't this instant print when it came to ideas. Because of how much it took for it to get to the computer in the basement, they really worked through stuff. They worked through the possible outcomes, ways that it could fail, the holes, all of this different type of stuff, and really taught them to think thoroughly and creatively.
Mhm.
And then what came up was that with all of the advancements in technology, we're losing our ability to
Think.
creatively solve and find solutions. Like if we can't put it in ChatGPT, I don't know what to do, right? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it was, going back to like a rich dad, poor dad, philosophy is that now we're getting paid to think.
Mm-hmm.
And I even whether it's Alex or Mosey too, it's just like you get paid to solve problems. Like you get paid to think, essentially. We get
But
paid to think.
but do you believe people are thinking? Like,
To what
because
I think
if you're
also to
saying that
what
we get paid to think, and then people are using AI as a replacement, because you can see it, right? Like I know everybody likes to think that, oh, I'm this magic person with AI. Don't nobody have it. It's like, okay, but now you're starting to look on like everything is
Everybody,
starting to
yeah.
look the same. Like the cadence, the syntax, the structure, it's all starting to look the same. You can tell when somebody didn't think about something. They just maybe inserted a prompt. So do you believe people are still thinking, or are they leveraging it out?
I think it depends. I'm not gonna lie. I think it depends on the task or the mission at hand.
Hmm.
I mean, for emails, I personalize it to a certain degree, depending on what's said. What does it look like? Or did I read it through and I was like, this makes sense. It flows, you know, with less typos. So it's like I'm gonna leverage what it is that makes sense to leverage. I'd rather leverage emails and have assistance with AI, but I'm not gonna leverage the calls
Hmm.
that's still being made. So you know it's at least you know it's a human at the end of the phone.
Yeah.
So I'd rather I think it just depends because if you can leverage AI and AI can do the same job you were gonna do,
I think it
you
depends
know.
on if it's problem solving too, though. Because, like I said, I think it's a tool. I think it should be used. I think there are ways that it enhances the business and everything like that. But there's still a level of problem solving and like using your mind. That I think that's what concerns me most is like, or because we talked about it on one of the shows, like at the end of the day, you're still going to at one point meet somebody face to face. You're going to have to stand on whatever it is that you've been putting out. So even if you've been producing this amazing content and you present yourself like a Nobel Peace Prize winner, one day they're going to sit and has to have an interview with you. And who knows what comes out your mouth, right? Like who knows if you're able to remember what you wrote or backed up what you said, and if
Mhm.
you're able to still have that mindset to
I think
stand on what you believe.
then I also think that comes back from or comes to originality and authenticity.
What
Because
do you
if
believe is the difference between the two?
no, I'd have to get the dictionary out to define the two words.
No, just like
But
just
no,
instinctively, like
but I'm saying they're both. I'm saying that in terms of say someone standing on a product or a message that they put out, how authentic and how original was the message from what it is that they're looking to put out there.
yeah,
But it's also an interesting concept when you think about there's nothing new under the sun,
yeah.
which is biblical. So it depends that if there's nothing new under the sun, then
Well,
everyone's already seen it before.
you know, when you say authentic, I think I have difficulty with three syllable words, whatever. But
Authenticity, just to make
authenticity,
sure.
um, being authentic, something that I have learned and have had to relearn is like finding your voice again. And I believe that it's really easy. Um, and this is just me looking back on life, and as life happens, right? Like you might have imposter syndrome, you might feel like might kind of beat yourself up on like, oh, I always say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or mess up here. And it can silence you in a sense. And it's not that other people are doing it, it's just that you've got a million different blogs telling you to do it this way, write it this way, say it in this voice, use this language, be funnier, be this, loosen up, straighten out. And it's like you have all of this input telling you who to be, that you can forget who you are. And so I believe that in your path, in your journey, like being authentic, it really does mean that. And if you're going to fail anyway, you might as well fail with your own voice.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I would rather fail being Chase than fail Chase being this other person, Chase being this guru that has this, lesson plan on how to reach a bigger audience,
right.
or changing my voice or changing my tone every time somebody has a critique.
Hmm.
I just think that's real because it's like we can say it. This is me, this is my story. That's something that I have struggled with. Like, why you say it like that? Or why are you so serious? Right. And I'm like, it just how I think.
But I think it helps though. Like I think there used to be a point in time when people used to tell me they're like, bro, you talk too much. Like people would just say, bro, you talk too much, or like being like the laughing stock of the room. And that really it bothered me because I was like, I don't like that. But then it's also like, well, if it did bother me, was there something true about what they're saying?
Yeah.
And so, oh, okay, so I was always the butt of the joke because of the way that I came off to people, even though I probably knew what it is that I knew, or I knew that I was investing almost daily or every other week. So I was investing like consistently. So I think that there's just certain things that I was like, oh, okay, I don't want to be the butt of the joke anymore. So I
Yeah.
decided to kind of change in a way that is m- me. It's just that, oh, okay, I don't need to talk as much because it's not necessary. So I think it's so I think I see it from the opposite end of that. It's like maybe I didn't lose my voice, but I gained a voice that I had the whole time. I just wasn't tapping into.
I think it's important not to confuse your voice with talking.
Yes.
Cause and I don't know, I may have the quote wrong. I believe it was Nelson Mandela, but I remember at some point I was invited into like a lot of leadership rooms, and I remember reading something, and it was kind of like, the strongest leader lets everybody else talk and just listens.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we believe that leadership or strength is being the loudest in the room and the one that dominates the conversation and always has an antidote. And it's like, actually being able to just sit and just hear the input from others and value other people's opinions. So I don't know if it was necessarily that. I think it was a growth for you, right? I
No,
think
it
it was
definitely was.
wisdom.
I think that, yeah, I think that it was just relatively easier to kind of just be the laughing. Like it was almost like I would make other people laugh.
Hmm.
And it's like, wow, that's great. It's like, man, it's a very fine line between you guys are laughing at me and you guys are laughing with me. And so
Absolutely.
I was like, yeah, I don't like this feeling.
Yeah.
So then I had to correct, even certain actions I was taking, even the way that I would talk to other people and just really be more comfortable sitting in like silence.
Sitting in silence is definitely important. And I think like sometimes ways this can also show up is always feeling like you have to put on, like you have to like put on a facade or a mask or this character when you're out. Um and I think that comes with being around a lot of noise, not feeling comfortable in silence. Like you feel like, if you come from a big family, maybe you feel like you always got to be the one because maybe you have to fight for
Hmm.
attention. There are a lot of reasons I think that can be you, but something I can relate to as well is like, you don't have to be the entertainer.
No, not at all.
You don't have to. And I think it makes it, when you do have something to say, that much more
Of
valuable
course.
because people listen.
Of course.
So I think that's something to just kind of keep in mind is that developing your voice does not always mean talking a lot. Your voice, your strength, your leadership, your power, it may come from your silence. Not in a weird, rude way. It's not saying don't be relatable and approachable. It's just saying that you do not have to be the one that carries the room and carries the conversation, carries the emotions, and making sure that everybody has a good time. Everybody is responsible for their own energy.
Yeah. And their own entertainment.
Yeah.
And their own entertainment. So
Yeah.
it's not my responsibility to entertain someone.
Yeah. And if
So
you feel like that, then maybe that's not the right person to
of
be around.
course, of
Like,
course. I had to realize that too. And that's why it's like, people see that I'm out the military now and they say, yo, like, man, don't you miss it? Or what do you think about it? And it's like, well, of course I love the military, but it's like maybe it wasn't conducive to the person I was becoming.
yeah, you got to be willing to let go.
So
Let go of who you were so you can bring that future self into the present. And it is okay. I think one of the best ways to know if you're on the right track is just in reflection. And that's going to come from your quiet time and your journaling. And I think qualifying what you listen to, looking at the evidence in that person's life, like, if you're listening to a bunch of relationship people, what do their relationships look like? If you're looking at a bunch of money people, what do their money look like?
right.
And not just taking everything you hear with like, oh yeah, feed me, feed me, feed me, and just really like, okay,
Yeah, it's just something to internalize. And I mean, I think that's why when I talk about distractions, or that's why I'm so like, no, I don't know if there's opportunities for me. It's because I used to be like very like, oh, okay, how much do I need to invest? Okay, when's my expected return? Like I
hmm
was very like, oh, okay, 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 let's see. And then I'd be the one to make the investment, and I'm like, all right, so
yeah,
all right, where's my money at? So I
yeah.
had to really just be like, nah, it's not serving me at the highest level. So
You'll get burned a couple times. I think you got to give yourself grace. You will get burned. well, like I said, we sit here.
Or learn from other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get burned. Like, don't.
You don't have to get
No.
burned, but you're never going to have all the information,
That's
because
true.
again,
No, that's
if you're
true.
waiting to have all the information, that might be the burn. It just like we talk about, like,
That's fair.
when are you going to make a decision to take action in regards to real estate, if that's important to you. I mean, sometimes overanalyzing is costing you. That could be a burn,
That is very
right?
true because you're sitting in inaction. So it just depends. I mean, look, I made my decision and I live with it. You just keep pushing forward as long as it don't sink the mothership. Keep pushing.
Absolutely. So, I'm super excited about what's next. We're really pushing for ourselves and bringing others with us to move into 2024,
Right.
spring, summer. Like, we're in February, and we have a lot of, like, we try to keep our goals short, so that way, I believe if you say 2024, you wait till June. I mean, you wait till November, you wait till December to be like, oh, I didn't do anything. But if you manipulate time and just say, okay, what is it that I want to see happen before April, before Easter? What do I want to see happen in my life? And what action do I need to take today to get it?
I think it really goes back to Parkinson's law.
Yeah.
That, you're saying, oh, I have till this time to make this happen.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe you didn't have all that time.
Yeah.
But you believed you had all that time.
And Parkinson's law is all work expands into the time allowed. So if you give yourself 6 months to get it done, it will take you 6 months to get it done. And if you give yourself
3 months to get it
6
done.
weeks,
6 weeks. Like, and I really do think it goes back to what type of life do people want to live. Because, when people look at me, they're like, man, I see all that you've done. Like, oh, man, I see all that you've done. And I'm like, I'm just getting started. Like, I don't.
yeah.
Like, and it's hard for me to really sit in that. Like, it's hard for me to say, oh, these are my wins. Like, that's what I used to do. It's like, if I feel like the current person I am today is able to run laps around the person I used to be, then I need to also then show that through my levels of input.
You remember that scene on Love and Basketball when she shot that 3 and then she, like, stood there? And then in the meantime, like, defense had got the rebound, scored on the other side. Coach was like, Monica, took her off the game, right? But it's like, sometimes we can do that. Sometimes we did good, we got the win, but then we stay there.
You just stay there,
and we
yeah.
forget to get back in the game. Like,
No.
you still got a game to win.
No, yeah, it's so easy to get lost up in all the wins of what you like. I don't want to be that person who gets caught up in, man, this is what I used to do, or this is what I did in this year. It's like it adds to your story, but I don't want that to be my end all be all.
I was the MVP of my high school football team.
It's like, bro, you're 35 right now. Like, bro,
47 years old. Let it.
Like, it's like, yeah, like it's like you like it's like, come on, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like that's who you used to be. But it's like I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because it shows that you at some point in time had a very high level of, like, I don't like you did something, but it's like I just don't want to get stuck in who I used to be.
Yeah.
And what I was used, like, or like who I used to be, what I used to be able to be capable of. Like, I want to be getting better.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the takeaway is, ask yourself, who do I choose to become? What is the gap between where I am and that person? And then what do I need to change in order to bring that future self into my present? And then from there, creating an action plan, a real one, writing it down, even if it's just the first draft, right? Like, don't be afraid of your first draft, and taking action. And I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I think just honestly understanding that you are powerful and you don't need any reassurance from anyone else. But the thing is that if you don't believe it, how do you expect others to believe it? And if you're not going to bet on yourself, how can you expect others to bet on you?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, keep shooting.
I'll leave us with this. Something Kanye said. Y'all know I'm a Kanye fan. He shared it the other day. He said, most people do not believe in themselves. They believe in the ability to create excitement for somebody else to believe in them. And he said, and that's where people fail. It's like, you don't believe in you. You just believe in your persuasive ability to get other people to believe in you. So what would it look like if 100%, hands down, all cards on the table, you just believed in you and kept shooting? That's it.
That's it. That's the word.
Make sure you like.
Thank you so much for your time and attention. Please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. We're just getting started. Tap in for the next episode.
Look y'all soon.